It's the Indian dream to have a nice big luxury SUV parked in your garage because it's versatile and certainly makes a statement. Only problem is they're really quite expensive for the most of us. Well, if you want that kind of an action at a fraction of the price, then you have something like BMW's X1, which has really got the company a solid bunch of numbers in the sales charts. But that car isn't going to have it all that easy anymore because there is now a new kid in town. X1, meet Audi's new Q3. It's here to chew up on your turf. But whether the Audi can manage that depends on several things. One of which is, which one has more street presence? The Q3 is clearly an Audi. It has all the typical styling cues, like the big grille and the slit headlamps with the neat daytime running lamps integrated there. True to Audi tradition, the body has minimalist lines, and at the rear, the tailgate houses elongated tail lamps. The Q3 basically looks like a baby Q5. However, the Q3 styling just feels a bit too predictable and safe. It won't blow you away. But then neither does the X1. Sure, it looks typically BMW, which means the kidney grille is prominent and all kinds of lines tighten the sheet metal and tease the eyes. However, the X1 with its long bonnet, low stance and longer proportion looks more like an estate rather than an SUV. There's no doubt that the Q3 looks more of an SUV than the X1, and the Audi's taller and broader proportions make this amply clear. While the Q3 might look more like an SUV, let's see which one of these behaves like one. Now both these SUVs are built around monocoque platforms that have been borrowed from other cars. So they aren't your tough as nails off-roaders. The X1 however boasts of 194mm of ground clearance, while the Q3 only has 170. However, the Q3 does boast of Audi's Quattro system. So the Q3 comes with Quattro, which in this case is a Haldex center differential, which means it's not a proper Quattro. However, this on-demand system reacts very quickly to wheel slip, cutting and transferring power in an instant. While both these SUVs are far from your serious off-road options, the Q3 with its on-demand four-wheel drive system will be a safer bet in low-grip conditions. And of course, the safety of a spare tire, even though it's a space saver, is hard to overstate. But that's off-road performance. But what are these two like to drive on the road? The Q3 is equipped with a 2-litre 4-cylinder motor. It uses a variable geometry turbo to develop 174 bhp and a healthy 38.7 kilograms of torque. It also comes equipped with a state-of-the-art 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox to speed things up. All put together, it works quite well. The Q3's engine really has this nice strong mid-range, and along with that quick swapping dual-clutch gearbox, well, it really does feel quite peppy and responsive. It's only when you ask for kickdowns that the dual-clutch gearbox seems a bit slow. The X1's 6-speed torque converter in comparison responds with urgency to kickdowns. It rushes to put the X1's more potent 177 bhp onto the tarmac. But after the Q3, the X1's 35.7 kilograms of torque doesn't feel as lively. And when you put them to the test against the clock, the Q3's stronger torque and 7-speed gearbox outpaces the X1 to the 100km/h mark by a whole second. So the Q3 is quicker in a straight line. But if you want to wrestle one of these along a winding road, the BMW should be the obvious pick, right? In parts, the X1 provides the driver what he craves. The hydraulic power steering is one of those. The X1 steering wheel just feels so much more substantial because it's got so much weight to it. And the non-adjustable suspension feels a lot like a 3 Series.
There's that sporting edge to the X1 suspension setup, which is clearly meant to thrill the drivers out there.
In comparison, the Q3 feels a bit clinical. The electric steering, although precise, is light and fails to excite when piloting around corners. It feels less like a weekend treat and more of a daily tool.
Well, the light steering proves to be a boon in city traffic where you can just twirl it around with very, very little effort.
But when you round up the two, the Q3 is faster, while the X1 is more willing around bends. Now, let's see which one feels more luxurious. When it comes to creating a sense of relaxed comfort, Audi's Q3 does a stellar job. Its engine has a part to play too.
Q3's motor feels silent, feels refined, and adds to that sense of calm and luxury on the inside.
In the X1, the engine note is more apparent and seems a bit coarse in comparison. And the X1 suspension doesn't put occupants at ease either. In contrast, the Q3's ride quality is much more welcoming.
Now the Q3's ride is really very nice and pliant, so it soaks up bumps and potholes a lot better than what the X1 can manage.
That is, except for big sharp bumps, which do tend to ruffle the Q3 more. Despite that, the Q3 is easily the better backseat to be in.
I really do like this backseat. I mean, you've got good under-thigh support from the seat base. The backrest isn't too reclined like in the X1. I prefer this more upright feel. You don't feel cooped in. You have a better sense of space. Really feels nice and airy. And well, you also have air vents for the backseat.
Then it was time to compare the interiors. Like most Audis, the Q3 has terrific interiors. Understandably, it's not as plush as the Q5 or Q7. However, the dashboard feels top-notch. There's a lot of storage bins, and we particularly liked the temperature adjustment knobs for the aircon. The MMI system doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it uses Audi's latest interface. And the controller for the MMI is now located on the center console rather than between the front seats. After the Q3, the X1's cabin just doesn't seem to have that sparkle and charm. The iDrive system's graphics aren't as slick as the Audi's. The dials look a lot plainer. The familiar BMW design fails to excite, and the typical all-black treatment makes it feel a bit morose. Sure, everything is well built and the steering wheel feels meaty to hold, but the X1 simply doesn't have the freshness of the Q3's cabin. In terms of equipment, it's quite close between the two. So, has the X1 done enough to hold on to its top slot here?
So, can the Q3 shake off the X1 and its first mover advantage? Well, it seems that this Audi, by offering just a little bit more in just about every department, has managed to do exactly that. Well, the engine, it has the edge in terms of performance. It also feels more refined. And that aside, dynamically, it feels more resolved and just more sensible. I mean, sure, the X1 throws a few bones out to the enthusiasts out there by giving you that meaty steering wheel and that typically clunky BMW stiff, sporty suspension setup. But the Q3, well, it's better to drive harder because it just feels more relaxed, more flat. It's more comfortable as well because its ride is more pliant and soaks up bumps and rough roads better. On the inside, you also get better space. That aside, look at the interiors. It just feels like a luxury car, just so much better than the X1 in that sense. And when you look at it from the outside, looks a bit more like an SUV too and has some of that off-road gear as well. But the most important point there is that the seating position is that much higher than the X1, so gives it an advantage, a more commanding view in that sense. So overall, if you look at it as a mini SUV, wannabe SUV, it just does a better job, the Q3 here, much better actually than the X1.